Good afternoon. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Taylor Stanley. I'm the family engagement specialist for DC Public Schools. I'm happy to be with you all this afternoon to talk about keeping your child safe online. I'm going to be perfectly transparent with you all. My daughter is on a tablet right now as I'm presenting. So I'm learning about this as much as you all are. And so I'm really excited for our presenter today from Common Sense Media. So I'm really excited. For those of you who might need subtitles, they are available. You can go look for the gear icon on the bottom right-hand corner of the video player, select captions or subtitles, and then you can choose a language from the list of available options. And so please, by all means, feel free to use the subtitles feature. Some general housekeeping in terms of Microsoft Teams. For those of you all who are DCPS families, you might have become familiar with Microsoft Teams because your child uses it for school or did use it for school during social distancing. And so we encourage you to use the Q&A feature, to ask questions, to upvote using the thumbs up feature for a question that somebody else might have asked, but you would also like the answer to, and to also share insights that you might have. Parts of the workshop are interactive, and so our presenter Barbara will be asking you all questions, and feel free to share your answers in the Q&A. One of the things that we ask is that you assume best intentions, go hard on ideas, not on people, and accept non-closure. We're not going to have every answer for you tonight. We're not going to be able to answer everyone's question. And because this is a moderated Q&A, we may not post everyone's question or comment just to maintain the flow of the conversation. But by all means, we encourage you to interact. We do have this workshop available entirely in Spanish this Thursday at 6 o'clock. So if you would like to hear about it in Spanish, we do have this option available. This workshop and the workshop in Spanish are part of our Parent University series, which is an opportunity for families to learn more about strategies to supporting their children, using the space to also share some of your own strategies, and then hearing from DCPS and other partners for additional strategies. So we're really excited to have our partner, Barbara Huth from Common Sense Media. She's the education program manager for the Mid-Atlantic and DC metro area. And so I'm really excited to have her for this presentation so that I can take notes on how to make sure that I'm keeping my child safe online with all the parental control features possible. So with that said, let's get to the good part of the presentation, which is what you're here for. Barbara, let me know when you are ready to share your screen, and then we can go ahead and unmute you as well.
Awesome. I am ready.
Okay.
Thank you so much, Taylor, for the introduction. Can everyone see my screen?
No, we can't.
Okay.
Did you try sharing?
Let's try again.
There it is.
Okay, perfect. Let's see now. Are we able to see it?
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Barbara.
Perfect. Thank you, Taylor. So good afternoon, everyone. I'm super excited to share with you the resources that are available from Common Sense on our site. And everything that I'm going to be sharing with you is free. And we have a resource page for you as well with some of these links, and then a link to the presentation that you can go through later, because we're going to kind of cover a lot in a short period of time. So for those of you that are not familiar with Common Sense, we are a nonprofit that rates, educates, and advocates to make sure that, to ensure digital well-being for all kids everywhere. And I wanted to start off tonight just with a little icebreaker, just for some fun before we get into, some of the heavy stuff with technology. But just if you can share a memory in the chat of, that you have with an older piece of technology. We notice that technology changes so fast, right? And some of these things our kids probably don't even know what they are. But just think of something, that you have a memory of on this list. One of my favorites is Blockbuster Video. When's the last time you've seen a Blockbuster Video? And just maybe some of your memories from these items of technology. And then just think about what new technology has replaced that item. Because you know that something new has come about and it's constantly changing. So I'm going to share with you some resources tonight that will help you kind of manage the different changes as they happen. And continue to share as we go through this, first part, but it's always fun to see like what kind of memories we have with these different technologies. And me, myself, I still can't get rid of my, CD player and all of my collections of CDs, even though I know they're all digitally available online. So I'm sure all of you have some, a memory with that as well. Okay, so tonight our main categories, we're going to be going and looking at some of the challenges that we're experiencing with technology, but then we're also going to end with talking about the benefits, because we know that, there's a lot of benefits to having technology, especially during this time where we're social distancing. It's great to have technology to be able to connect with family and friends and learn and have fun as well. So we're going to be covering both sides this evening and sharing tips and resources to support you and your family. So if you want to share once again in the chat, just what are some of your biggest challenges that you're experiencing with digital media? This could be challenges that you're having personally, challenges with work, or maybe challenges that you're having with your kids with balancing digital media. And then as you're sharing your challenges, Taylor, Sakan, if you'll share just some of the things that are coming up in the chat, and then we'll go through and talk about some of the nationwide challenges that we're seeing.
Oh, yeah, we have a few people who commented on the throwback pics. So the CD player, the mixtape. Oh my goodness. Someone else mentioned the floppy disk or the hard disk. So definitely some throwbacks there.
Oh gosh, yes, the floppy disk, and then when it would have an error, it was like the saddest thing ever, and all of your data was gone. Great, thanks, Taylor. Does anyone have any challenges that they're experiencing?
I think that folks will share their challenges in a little bit.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. So as we're going to go through some of these challenges, please feel free to add to the conversation some of the tips that work at your home. These workshops are really great. Normally they're in person, and a big part of it is having that, that dialogue and that discussion of what our challenges are and how we are overcoming those challenges together as a community. So please feel free to use the chat as the way to have that sense of community, even though we're doing this from a distance.
Yeah, we're having a bunch of challenges come in. Having balance, inappropriate YouTube commercials, which yes, that is a challenge for me as well. And then also limiting screen time is another one.
All right, awesome, thank you. And so a lot of these challenges are challenges that parents are and families are having across the nation. And the first challenge that always comes up is just, I feel like my child is addicted to their phone, right? And our kids actually know that they are being manipulated to spend more time on their devices. When we recently asked teens in a research about their, social lives, 72% of them believe that tech companies were manipulating them to spend more time on their device. And there are actually characteristics on your phone that make you want to be on it longer. And we're going to go through some of those and then ways that we can kind of combat those and fight back from those so that we can have more of a balanced approach to using media. So the first thing is that, there's this pressure to be connected 24/7. And I think as, adults, it's tricky for us to balance being reachable 24/7. So it's even harder for our kids to have that balance and extremely challenging for them. And there's this like constant influx of communication. And depending on how many different apps and ways that our kids are communicating, there's even more ways that they can get messages. So whether it be through text, it could be through social media apps, email, if they're sending each other messages on Google Docs. Like, there's just so many different ways that our kids are communicating with each other. And then, there's just this fear of missing out. We can now see what's happening in real time and what our friends are doing all the time. And so we also have this fear that we are going to miss out if we're not answering a text right away, or we might miss a joke, or we might miss, something that's happening in the conversation. So, our kids are really trying to just keep up with all of their friends as well. And then we're going to get into those sneaky tech tricks. And then just some of the information about these superficial social contracts that our kids are having with their phones, which means that they feel like they have to answer like within a certain period of time. Otherwise, it might send the wrong message. Like, if I don't answer, one of my friends, they might think I'm mad at them or I don't care about them, right? And sometimes they feel like they have to answer immediately. And then the final one, which I feel like we all definitely experience this, is just this information overload. There's so much information that we can get from our devices and from technology, but sometimes it just gets overwhelming as well because, there's so much coming at us, and just being able to filter it, find the information that's useful and also shut down right when we've had too much. So these are the ways, or some of the ways, that our technology is addictive by design. The first thing are the likes and follows. So every time we get a like on a post, a social media post, or someone follows us, it just really gives us that feel good affirmation that someone likes what we posted, right? So this makes us want to do it more. So it could keep us on our device for a longer period of time, and specifically on social media for a longer period of time. And then there's the notifications. Notifications are read for a reason, and it's to give you that sense, your brain, that sense that there's an emergency, right? And an urgency to answer that notification. So, if you're one of those people that has like 1,000 emails, right? That's what mine usually says. And that 1,000 number, right, is in red, just kind of staring at you every time you open your phone. You then want to like press on it to find out, what those notifications are. And then there's the randomness. So especially on social media, there's this ability that you can keep scrolling and there's always something new and something to find, and you're never really quite sure what you're going to get. And that is exciting and keeps you on longer instead of just being like, okay, it's done. Now, Instagram has like implemented where it'll tell you that you've caught up on your feed, which is great. But if you go into like the search function and go into like other content, you can keep looking at content for hours and hours. And then there's things like snap streaks, which are those social contracts between our kids. And a snap streak is when you send a snap, or basically like a message in Snapchat, and then your friend sends a message back, and it's within a 24-hour period. And these will go on for days. You can have them go on for days. So some teens have snap streaks that last for like 60 days, 300 days. And if you end up breaking that snap streak, it's like you're failing your friend, and, you know, not committing to that social contract. So they're really important. And some kids feel like this is something that like defines their friendship, is how many snap streaks they have. And then also autoplay. And this is something that I have fallen victim to a lot during this time. I'm watching Netflix, right? Or, you know, I'm watching Hulu, or maybe it's Amazon Prime. But all of those different apps automatically play the next video before I even have time to think if I want to watch the next show. And, you know, a lot of them are only 5 seconds in between the next video. And then finally, in-app purchases. A lot of apps, games, you know, different things have something where you could spend some money and then you can play longer or more. And the more you spend, the more features you get, which means the more time you want to spend on it because it's more fun. So these are some ways that you can outsmart sneaky science. The first way is to check yourself. And a great way to do this is to use things that you already have. Both iOS, so the iPhone, and Android have built-in features that will show you how much time you're spending on your device and also what you're spending it on. So you can see like, okay, I've used you know, social media for 2 hours today, and I've also been on the web, maybe shopping, etc., for how many ever minutes. And then you can start like a conversation with your family about, you know, how much you're spending, and then also decide if you want to make changes, and then challenge, you know, each other to make changes. So it's more like, you know, a fun game, and you're like having a little accountability together as a family to make positive changes. The next thing you can do is turn off or limit notifications, specifically limit notifications that are not coming from a person. So social media, they're usually coming from, you know, the actual app. So like a robot or computer is sending you those notifications. And so not having those on your home screen, you won't feel like it is urgent that you're answering them. And then you can set a time to check your social media feeds. Instead of every time you get a notification, you're then checking into your app, which then leads to 10 minutes, 20 minutes, you know, maybe even an hour, depending, that you didn't expect on checking your social media at that time. So you can check it at a time, set a limit, like maybe every day I check my social media for up to an hour, whatever works best for your family. And then you should be able to turn off any autoplay and in-app purchases. For autoplay in all of the streaming apps except for YouTube, you actually have to log into the computer and turn it off when you're logged in on your computer. You can't turn them off in the app or like on your streaming device, so that makes it a little harder. And then for YouTube, you can actually toggle, so just press a button in the app to turn off autoplay. And then finally, you can go grayscale, which means that your phone will just be in black and white. And that's really helpful when you go to bed. You can turn your phone to grayscale so that you're not, you know, sitting there endlessly scrolling because the colors are drawing you in. You'll just see that your phone's a tool, and you'll put it, you know, set your alarm and put it away. And in the resources and also on the presentation, I have more information about these sneaky science ways to outsmart them. And you can find that in the article if you're interested in like how to actually turn your phone to grayscale and turn off autoplay. Okay. So the next thing I wanted to get into is just a little question, and you can answer this in the chat. Do you think it's a myth or truth that parents spend less time on devices than kids and teens? So we hear a lot about that our kids are always online, they're on their devices so much, we feel like they're addicted. But do you think it's a myth or a truth that we spend less time on devices than our kids and teens? And I'll give you a second to answer in the chat, and then I'll share with you if it is.
Yeah. And Barbara, in the meantime, we also have some folks who are also concerned about the type of people who have access to their children online. And then also a couple of other commenters mentioned that they were worried about the role of social media on their children's self-esteem.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So those are great questions, and we are going to cover some of those later on. So, and specifically the pros and cons of social media, and some of that research where kids talk about their social media lives. So we'll get into some of that. And then we'll also go over just like privacy and how to set some privacy settings so that your kids know who they're interacting with, and you know who they're interacting with in these kind of platforms as well.
Awesome. And also, we've got a lot of people who are saying that it is a myth. I think everybody has a sense of self-awareness about how long they spend on their devices as well.
Yes, and I thought it was a myth too. I was like, of course, it's a myth because we're on our devices all the time for work. So we have to be, using more time than our kids. And it is a myth, but what I found really interesting is that, parents in our survey were spending almost 9.5 hours with screen media daily, but this was including for personal and work use, but almost 8 hours of it was devoted to personal screen time. So that was really eye-opening to me. And I've really tried to think about, how I'm using my personal device. Like, is my phone next to me while I'm, working? Should I move it to another room? And just different things like that. And then teens spend an average tweens, so 8 to 12-year-olds spend an average about 5 hours a day on screen media, and teens are spending about 7.5 hours a day on screens. And those numbers for our tweens and teens are for personal use. That is not including any time used for academics or work time. And so a big part of this is just really, thinking about how we can be a model for our kids and just really setting that standard. So if we want our kids, to not, to have a balance and not use their devices as much, we need to show them when they're talking to us, we're having that face-to-face communication with them, and we're putting down our device as well. And it's always good to monitor, right? To use limits, say maybe today we're using this amount of time for social media or for screen time, but not lecture all the time. And I'm going to share some of the resources that you can set your family up for success in these conversations. And then a big part is that mediation, right? So co-viewing together, watching things, doing things together, setting up different apps, games, and if they're ready for social media, doing those things together, and then, letting them make some of these choices on their own, but being ready to step in. So, a lot of parents will ask, is there a specific time limit for screen time that's good? Is there a 2-hour maximum limit? And the rules, kind of vary. There's not really a specific time. It varies by your kid, and your kid's best. But the American Academy of Pediatrics has some questions that you can ask yourself about your child. And if you're answering yes to these questions, that your kid's physically healthy and sleeping enough, that they're connecting socially with friends and family. If you're answering yes to these questions, then they're probably balanced. They have a balance with their media. But if they're not, if you're finding yourself that, you're answering no to a question or two, then maybe that's a time to kind of think about some changes. So if you're thinking about they're not sleeping enough, it might be because their device is in their room, like their cell phone, and that they're texting in the middle of the night, and you could turn it on do not disturb, or put your phones in a basket together as a family downstairs or in another room in the house, so that they're not using their device and it's causing them not to sleep. So a big part of, having that balance is just having some device-free zones and times. And for all families, you can find a time that works for you. Common Sense recommends dinner just because, that's a time where a lot of families get together. And we have a device-free dinner like kit that you can get tips. There's also videos, and you can even like send out invites to have a device-free dinner. But you could also do a device-free breakfast, a device-free commute to school or work, device-free after dinner times, with just times where you're talking to each other without the presence of devices. And then Common Sense also has some media agreements where you and your family can sit down and have a conversation about how media is used in the family. And this is really helpful just to make sure everyone's on the same page. It will also help just, curb any, a lot of future arguments of not knowing, what the expectations are. And it's nice because you're talking about, the responsibilities and then also the privileges when it comes to using media in your household. And then Common Sense has a free tech balance program, which will send you reminders like once or twice a week with little tips on how to keep a balanced media approach in your family. And it's great for parents of 3 to 8-year-olds. If you have a child that's a little bit older, a little bit younger, you can of course sign up. The tips are geared to that age range, but it's just a really great way to kind of just keep up with some of the new ways to practice healthy media habits at home. And we have it available in English and Spanish. You would just text either the word kids or familia to this number right here. And then another, so I showed you some of the questions from the American Academy of Pediatrics just to see, if it's an appropriate amount of screen time or media use, depending on the age. And there's actually a full guide that's included in the resources, and it's on the slide as well, that will just kind of walk you through some of the things to expect depending on the age of your child. So I'll just show you what it looks like really quickly. But if you scroll down, you'll see that it starts at 18 to 24 months, because for the most part, under 18 months, you should really have a limited amount of media use with your child. But you'll start seeing that like for 18 months, it might be good to start introducing video chat with long distance family and friends, supervised. And then some other things as you're getting into, 2 to 5 years, having those screen-free times and zones, right? Choosing high quality and age appropriate media together. And then as they're getting older, right, you can see that, it gets a little more complex. So for 6 to 12 years old, thinking about that balanced screen use, whatever that means for your family. And then also co-watching. So watch and play high quality and age appropriate media together. Start thinking you might want to consider parental controls, which I'll show you some parental controls tonight. And then as they're in their teenage years, really just start thinking about giving them a little more, freedom, guide them towards high quality media. They're probably going to start choosing, a lot on their own during this time. And then also, instead of really thinking about the parental controls, really think about privacy settings and teaching your kids how to use those privacy settings and setting them up in the app so they know who they're sharing their pictures and their information with. Okay. So then when it comes to parental controls, if you decide that they're necessary, the first thing to consider is just, is it necessary? Because the best approach is least invasive. If you can avoid using this extra piece of tech, try to control your family's tech. It's all the better. But if you decide to use them, here's some steps to keep in mind. The first thing is to identify your goals to find the right tool, because there are so many different things out there, it can really be overwhelming. And And then you want to make sure that you're setting everyone up in your family for success. So it's best to start a family meeting to talk about why you're using the controls and, you know, what the purpose is for your family. So they don't feel like they're being spied on, but it's because you're trying to help them, right, and guide them and protect them. And then also, you know, troubleshoot any potential hiccups. So, you know, if you're setting a certain time limit for an app or a game, and then, you know, just be prepared for when your kid asks for more time, like what is the response that you'll have for that, or the, you know, the plan for that. And then really just stay on the path that for self-regulation. We really want our kids to be able to, you know, give the tools to them to be thriving adults. So, you know, just help them regulate their device use on their own, and eventually, you know, as they get older, kind of limit some of these parental controls so that they can start thinking about, you know, just how they're using their devices on their own. And a good place to start if you're thinking about parental controls are the things that are already available on your devices. So there's Screen Time for iPhone, and it's free on your iPhone. It will give you a usage report. It'll tell you like that you can turn off your phones, so you can turn off all of your family phones at a certain period of time. You can also set limits for certain app categories in your family, like games and entertainment or social media. And then you can also have things that are always allowed, whether it be like, you know, the phone so that they can call you, you know, Google Maps or something like that. But you can also have an always allowed app, even if it's during downtime or if they've kind of went past their limit. You can also set content and privacy restrictions, so you can put limits for mature content and also put limits on how much information third parties or these websites can access about your kids. So all of this is available if you have the iPhone on the Screen Time app. And I did put a resource which will kind of give you all the information about these parental controls for this workshop. And then if you have Android, it's called Digital Wellbeing for Android, and it does very similar things. The one big thing that's different about Android is that a parent can't actually control the digital well-being. This is on individual devices that you could set up with your child. But if you're interested in having more control over your kid's Android phone, you can check out Google's Family Link Parental Control app. So it's called Google's Family Link Parental Control app, which kind of works similar to Screen Time for the iOS or iPhone. Okay, so beyond, you know, thinking about just media balance, there's just a lot of iffy stuff out there in terms of content that's available, specifically maybe on YouTube or on the streaming devices. And sometimes it's really overwhelming just to find quality content or just know what our kids are watching and why they might be watching it. And so a good place to start is with co-viewing, right? And when they're younger, it's really helpful to help kids make good choices. And usually you're making the choices for the media that they use when they're younger. But as they get older, and actually around age 8, they really start wanting to start making their own decisions when it comes to media and tech. So how can we find out, right, what they're using and if it's something that we want them to be on, and be able to have conversations about the media that they're using. And a lot of this is really fun too, and just a way to get to know your kid and what they enjoy. So if you can, in the chat, we're gonna see if we have some information about a movie, game, or TV show, or maybe an app that your kids really like, or maybe that you've heard about and you want to know more about. So if you could share that in the app, or sorry, in the chat, and then we can actually look it up on the site and see if there's some information about it. And Taylor and Sakan, if you'll just let me know if anything's coming up in the chat.
So in an earlier question, in some earlier comments, we've had folks mention Minecraft, We've had someone mention TikTok as well. So that might be, those might be a couple of good places to start.
Perfect. So at Common Sense, we rate and review books, movies, TV, games, apps, and you can access those ratings on our website. So I have Fortnite here just as an example, just because that is one that comes up a lot, but we can look up any review. And I will actually be talking about TikTok in just a little bit, but we can also see it on here. So if you're on our website, we're on the Common Sense Media side for parents. And the easiest way to do this is just to go to the search bar and type it in. So Minecraft is really popular. So let's type in Minecraft and see what comes up. And I think it's because I didn't separate the two words. Oh, no, I know why it is, because it's with an E. Okay, there we go, Minecraft. So you can see that we have a review for Minecraft. And we also have ways that you can watch the reviews as well. So if we click on the review, it's going to take you to what Common Sense says in terms of age appropriateness, but then you'll also see if any parents reviewed the app as well. And parents are saying on average 6+, and then you'll see, you know, if there are any kid reviews and what they're saying about it as well. There's usually some kind of pictures to get you to know what the app looks like, or game or video. And then sometimes for the really popular ones, there'll be a really short video to give you an overview of that particular resource. Then there's a content grid, which will tell you if it has any educational value, which Minecraft does have a lot. It's really great for learning in many ways, depending on how your kids are using it. And then if there's anything else to worry about. So it's pretty, you know, it might be a little harder to play. And there might be a little bit of violence or scariness on Minecraft. And so it'll tell you some more information about that. And then there's a really quick paragraph about what is it, and if it's okay for your kids, and how to also, one of my favorite parts is just looking at the parent reviews, so then I know like what to look for, what other parents have already experienced. And then my favorite part as well is just this section, what can I talk to my kids about with this app? So to have those conversations about media. And then we can also look at TikTok just because we're here. So I'm going to type in TikTok into the search bar. And I think once again, it's all connected. So TikTok is a you know, lip syncing social media app, and Common Sense says that it's good for 15+. Here's an example where you have a little video explaining what it is, but kids are sharing videos. They could have like dual videos where they're singing or lip syncing to each other and then commenting on it. There is now a like 13 and under TikTok version, which I'll get into on another slide. But this will give you all the information about TikTok. And I think we actually have a ultimate guide. So some of the really popular things, we have ultimate guides, which has even more information. So we have one for Minecraft, and we also have one for TikTok, Snapchat, YouTube. So you can click on any of these and it will have a plethora of information about like privacy settings, you know, just the different, you know, features of the app or game. And specifically for YouTube, we are also rating and reviewing YouTube shows. So you can see those ratings and reviews of, you know, some of the popular YouTube shows that kids are watching. Taylor, was there anything else that was coming up in the chat?
You know, Fortnite was popular. You did cover Minecraft and TikTok. One parent mentioned a show on Disney called Big City Greens.
So we do have a review for Big City Greens. So, and this actually got one of the Common Sense selection seals for being good for watching with families, a Common Sense family seal. So, you know, it's really great for, you know, teaching character strengths. And you can see that has a lot of positive messages and positive role models and representations. So you can click on that to see some more information. And so you can access these by just going to commonsensemedia.org and then just searching in the search bar, and you can search any of, you know, the movies, games, or apps that your kids might be using. Okay, and then another challenge that, as you know, as parents we may have is just with social media. And social media, you know, gets a bad rap a lot of times, but it does provide a lot of connection for our kids. And honestly, you know, that is where our kids are. It's like the playground now for them with their friends, and they're communicating and talking to each other on it. Many kids or many teens are on more than one social media app, and they're using different social media than we may be using. They're using TikTok, they're using Snapchat and Instagram. They're not really using Facebook anymore. They always tell me that's for old people. So these are some of the social media pros and reasons why our kids and why we want to be on it. I mean, a lot of us are on social media as well. And it's really, you know, a place to find support, a place to learn. You know, I use Twitter a lot to learn from other educators, and there's a lot of great information shared out there. And so our kids are doing the same thing on social media, and they're engaging with each other, they're communicating, they're collaborating, they're connecting with their friends, and, you know, on these apps. And for the most part, teens say that social media makes them feel better about themselves, not worse. So if you're looking at among 13 to 17-year-olds, they're saying it makes them feel more confident, better about themselves, and less lonely and depressed. Though students, or excuse me, kids that are struggling with social emotional well-being, they tend to be the most vulnerable when it comes to social media use. So just kind of thinking about that in your kid, if social media, maybe they need to take a break from some of social media. And then there are some social media cons. You know, you might have to deal with negative comments. It can be distracting. It can be hard to set it down. And then it really kind of, you know, makes that FOMO even feel more intense, or fear of missing out. And then, you know, depending on if your child's on social media a lot, they might not be interacting in person as much. I taught high school, and I used to see just my kids, you know, on social media in a circle, not looking at each other. So, you know, just making sure that they're still having that in-person communication. And then there's some things to look out for when, if you decide that social media, you know, it's time, or, you know, you want them to be on it. And these don't necessarily mean like it's a deal breaker, but it's just things that you should be aware of with a new app or even game, because, you know, social media could be a variety of different things. I would go on the app and just check, is there age inappropriate content? Can you find it pretty easily? Is the setting public, meaning that anyone can see what you're posting? Is it a default to be public? And how do you make that setting private so that you know who you're sharing your information with? Is there location tracking? So like on Snapchat, there's like the Snap Map, where you can actually see where all of your friends are if they allow that location to be on. But there's ways that you can turn that off, and you can go into what they call ghost mode, so that you can't actually see the location. And then, you know, are you noticing any negative culture or cyberbullying in the app? And then just some of the other things. I did put a full article with these and some information about each of these and how to turn them off, or just kind of, you know, set those settings in the resources for this session as well. And then speaking of cyberbullying, you know, there's a lot of different research around cyberbullying, and it varies. It just depends on how the questions asked. But just to show you, in general, 15% of students have said that they have been electronically bullied versus 18 to 31% that are saying that they have been bullied in person. And we've seen a lot of different percentages or research. So in 2018, the Pew Center research said that 59% of teens were saying they've experienced cyberbullying. And then in our research, the Common Sense Social Media Social Life research, they said 13% have ever been cyberbullied. And then 29% had said it happened once or twice. So just depending on how the question's asked, because it's a self-reported question, there's a wide range of reporting in terms of the numbers. But if you are, if your kid's safety is in question or the harassment is pervasive and overwhelming, these are some tips to help out your child, and also just teaching them these tips too. So the first thing would be to block whoever the cyberbully is and report. So you should be able to report in the app. If an app does not have a reporting feature on it, then they should probably not be on that app. And then, so these are good things to set up with your kid as you're deciding if, being on a certain app is a good idea. And then make sure you take screenshots just so you have proof of the interaction. Otherwise, they could delete the account and then it's not there. And then also contact appropriate parties. Make sure that you tell them to contact an adult. Face-to-face mediation can also be helpful in certain situations as well. And then, just when thinking about online relationships, just if your kid's going to be social online, just make sure you're prepping them first. Make sure that you give them clear expectations. You're going over those privacy and safety. You can go to the review and just see how to set up those things together. And then also, talk to them about what information they should and should not be sharing online. So no personal information like address, right? Or identifying where they are, geolocation, so their location. Just some of those things to keep them safe. And then almost all apps should have, and if they don't, then this is also another question, but almost all apps should have a way that you can set things to private. So this is just an example of Instagram, and normally it's public by default, but you can easily press one button to change it to private, so only the people that you accept into your friend group can see your posts or comments. And then these are just some tips about TikTok, which we looked at earlier. TikTok actually has ways to make your account private. You can also do a younger version of TikTok, so just make sure your tweens use their real age, because that version of TikTok is just a lot safer for the younger kids and doesn't collect data in the same way. And then you can also have digital well-being and restricted mode settings within TikTok. So setting up the app together is a great way just to kind of learn about these apps, and then also just teaching your kids some of these privacy settings that are available to them to protect them. And then it's always just great to talk about social media and family values. So, posts that you never share on social. So if it's a post that gives personal information, and then posts that you need to ask permission. So maybe another person is in the photo and it's, courtesy to ask if it's okay to post that picture. And then maybe posts that are always okay to share. So modeling these things is always a great way, especially when kids are younger, as you're using social media, for them to learn about, the different family values that you have when posting online. And then it's never too early to talk about digital citizenship. DCPS is actually incorporating digital citizenship within the schools. So all the schools are teaching digital citizenship, and Common Sense has a free curriculum, which you can check out as well. But it's really great if you have these conversations continuing on at home as well as at school, just so that our students are really becoming, able to, advocate for themselves and, protect their privacy, also their digital footprint, and really know what to do when interacting online. And when it comes to cyberbullying, our #1 tip is to encourage our students or our kids to be upstanders. That's the #1 way to combat cyberbullying, is that if more children are upstanders, then it happens less often. Okay, and given that we're almost to our time, I just want you to think about some of the benefits of digital media, and then I'm going to show you a few more resources that are available to you as well. So digital media is really great for anytime, anywhere learning, especially during this time. It's really helped us to be able to continue to access information and learn, even though school buildings were closed. It's a really fun way to be creative and express ourselves, and then also connect and collaborate. Especially during this time, we may be using it even more than we were before. And, there are just many different ways to use technology to learn. There's, actual academic apps, but then there's apps to learn to play instruments or tutorials. You can learn another language, learn new recipes, learn about other cultures. There's just so many different ways to use technology. And Common Sense has also put together a website called wideopenschool.org that has a lot of free ways for you to learn at home with your kids. And I'm sorry, let me get out of the YouTube. And if you are on the site wideopenschool.org, it'll ask you if you are an educator or if you're a family. And then you can also choose your grade band. So if you're pre-K through grade 5. And what's really fun, so we were doing daily schedules to kind of help with this time, but right now we're doing a virtual summer camp, which has like weekly themed activities by grade band. So you see like there's different reading and writing activities, arts. Then there's also like family tips in terms of life skills. There's also science, fun things to do that you're still learning together. And they're weekly themes. So this week's theme is magic and mysteries. And you can click on the different grade level to find the different schedules. And then there's also fun things like, virtual field trips that are available online. And also, just a whole bunch of different academic activities to keep them learning throughout the summer. And then one other resource before we get to the big picture and questions. We also have resources for families during this time that include the Ultimate Guide to Google Classroom, and Ultimate Guide to Zoom, a podcast, and just so many other things as they're coming up as families are saying, like, we could really use this to help us during this time. So resources are constantly being added to our website as well. And so this is just the big picture for today. As you're leaving, there's a few things you can do, right? Set up a family media agreement, co-view with your child, and find out what they're interested in. And then also, when it comes to media, just encourage creation as well as consumption. So it's not necessarily about the time, but just like what you're actually doing. So are you creating, collaborating, communicating, or are you just consuming? So I'm going to stop there and see if there are any questions from the group.
Yeah, we had one person so wondering if sleep issues can be linked to device or screen time, and then what tips you have on reducing time, especially during quarantine, that causes the least amount of stress. Like, no one, as a parent, nobody wants to rip their child's phone from their hands, but like something's got to give, right?
Yeah, definitely. So we actually have a research report about sleeps and devices. So sleep and screens. Excuse me, I've been talking a lot today. And you can see that one of the biggest things is that we are being woken up in the middle of the night by notifications on our phones. And so if you turn off your notifications, so there's like a do not disturb feature, and you can set it. So you can set your phones like as a family, like at 10 p.m., we're going to turn off our phones, or maybe it's 8 p.m., right? And they're not going to turn back on until, when we get up, maybe 6 or 7. And that will limit any notifications from coming in throughout the night, which is really helpful. And another thing is, if you're leaving your phone next to your bed, you might be checking it without you even knowing it. So maybe just putting it in another part of the room and having like an old-fashioned alarm clock. So like I have, the old alarm clock that just like has a buzzer, which is really helpful too, as well. And then also just like putting your device outside of the bedroom can really help with sleep. So, and it really helps is if you do it as a family and not just like call out one of your kids, like, hey, you need to like turn off your device. But if everyone kind of does it together and talks about why we're doing it, it just works a lot better that way. And then the second question about just like limiting device use, I think the big thing is, everything is so different right now that we are all using our devices so much more. So maybe just like thinking about like looking at your screen time and seeing like, okay, how much as a family, I've been using my device this many, for this long, maybe making small but obtainable goals as a family. Like, let's all try to decrease our device use, by 30 minutes. And by doing that, like, let's do an activity, like maybe go for a walk as a family together, right, outside. And just, simple things like that, maybe doing an activity together or playing a game together, or just something where you're not focused on not using your device, but you're focused on, connecting and doing something together as a family.
Awesome. Another question that was brought up, let's say that you have an iPhone and your kid has an Android, or vice versa. Are there any, you mentioned apps that would let you control your kid's phone from your phone. Is there something that you can do when you have two different types of phones, or do you just go into your kid's phone? And
so, yeah, I think you still should be able to set up the parental controls, even if your child has a different phone than you, but you want to set it up like at the beginning, or you could probably, and I'm not as familiar with Android, but in that one resource that says parental controls, there's a lot of information about this on how to set those up, but you might be able to log into the Google Family link and be able to do it from there as well.
Awesome. Let me see if there. Oh, this is one. Are you providing a teaching tool for students or families on how to use Word, Excel, PowerPoint? Do you have resources for that on the website?
We don't have a lot of resources on those currently, but we do have like Google Classroom, Zoom, some of the other things. So as things are coming up, but on Wide Open School, if you are on that site, there is like a learning at home section that will provide, some different resources as well. So like getting ready for video chatting. Here's the parental controls on your iOS, and there's the one on Android. And then maybe the Google Translate app. So they're constantly adding things to this. So there might be some more resources like that. And I can always give that suggestion if that's something of interest as well, to put it on the Wide Open School app.
Great. Thank you. We are at 5 o'clock, and so I do want to honor that. Let me share my screen. So yes, we'll share. Thank you again, Barbara, for providing all of this wealth of information. Sorry. The resources that Barbara mentioned are all online at this bit.ly link, bit.ly/DCPS online safety. And you can use that to access the resources that Barbara talked about. And so you can use that. You can use those the different Common Sense Media sites, the different resources, the family contract. Those are all available on the site, on the link. We do want to know how we did, just so that we can get a sense of, what worked for you all as attendees, what other types of workshops you'd like to see. And so if you could take a quick survey, you can also email us directly, parentu@k12.dc.gov with any questions. Sakan also shared resources for that question that was asked about teaching Word and Excel. There are some resources that were shared that I'm posting in a Q&A as well. But, we want to make sure that the workshops that we are putting together are relevant for you all. That's the goal, that they assist you in being able to support your children academically, social, emotionally. So we do have some workshops coming up. We have developmental milestones for 3 to 5 year olds. We also have helping your child become a reader, and that's for families with kids kindergarten through 2nd grade. And then we have stress management for families with young children. And so that's ideal for families with 3 and 4 year olds. And so feel free to RSVP for them. We would love to have you all. We do also have past Parent University workshops on YouTube at bit.ly/DCPS Parent U vids. We will continue to have workshops available starting in the school year. We won't be hosting it in July, but we do want to continue to provide you all with resources. And so checking the YouTube page is a great way to see how else you can support your child on a variety of issues and topics. Again, I really want to thank Barbara Huth from Common Sense Media. I know that I'll be using Common Sense Media to look up some of these shows for my daughter, and I'm excited about that. And then thank you again to the moderators on my end who were available and to push your questions through. Thank you to Sakan, who is from our ed tech team, who set this all up. And families, I know that it is tough right now to not feel guilty about having your kid on their tablets, on their phones, especially now, and especially now that it's during the summer. And so don't feel guilty, but use the tools that Barbara gave you so that you can find more productive ways for your children to use these tablets or these phones. So I hope that you all enjoy your summer. I hope that it's filled with game nights and device-free dinners and breakfasts, and that you're all able to spend time with each other. So thank you all again. I hope to see you all at other workshops. I hope to see you all in the fall, and have a great day.
Thanks, Taylor.